Attention sports teams. Let us introduce you to the best fan engagement tool in the game, .vote. By getting a .vote web address for your team, you can allow fans to engage and interact with big-time decisions. In a single click, not only can fans make their opinions heard, but sports teams get a better understanding of their fans' interests. Keep your fans engaged. Simply visit GoDaddy.com today, type in the desired name of your web address, and let the voting begin.
Hey, the Knicks are back. The NBA's got a problem with the FBI. Woody Johnson just makes everything worse. And we're joined by the great Andrew Marchand to break down everything in sports media. It's all on a new edition of Gordon Damer on Sports right now. Hey, welcome into the pod for this Friday. Gordon Damer on Sports. Lots to get into on this edition. Big football weekend with week 8, already week 8 of the regular season, basically the midway point of the regular season, which is not good news for Jet fans. We're only halfway done, Jet fans. Still have another half of the season still to go. Oh, what things will the Jets do in the second half of the season? We can't wait to find out. On today's episode, we will touch on Woody Johnson's comments from earlier in the week. Woody, always ready to make things worse. Just when you think it can't get any worse, Woody finds a way. Plus, we'll talk everything sports media with the great Andrew Marchand from The Athletic and andrewmarchand.com. But I wanted to start today by focusing on the NBA. And I was going to focus on, obviously, the Knicks with their season opener the other night, Thursday night against the Cavs. But as John Lennon once said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. And when you're talking about the NBA, the Knicks are not the first thing on the docket when you're talking about the NBA. No, the NBA gambling story is front page news. Never good when the NBA is involved with the FBI, but we'll get into that too. But before we get too deep into the podcast today, I need you to hit that subscribe button, especially on YouTube. That's where we really want to grow the pod. And we have a special event coming up on the podcast. We're going to be giving away a pair of tickets, Knicks Bucks, November 28th at the Garden. If you want to go, we got your chance to win a couple of tickets. The way to enter to win, super easy. Follow me on Twitter. Like the post I put up about the Knicks and Bucks game when it eventually gets posted. And then most importantly, you got to be subscribing to the podcast on YouTube. That is the big one. And we'll have more details on the contest coming up in the future episodes. All right, let's get into the Knicks because they do beat the Cavaliers. Season opening win on Thursday night, 119-111. And you notice some differences right away, right? OG Anunoby certainly had a monster game. The bench was certainly more involved. And congratulations to Mike Brown. First win, hopefully the first of many, as Knicks head coach. But I do want to preface, right out of the box, this is obviously just one of 82 regular season games. So the NBA is not where the regular season has all that much importance. In fact, you can make the argument it has the least amount of importance. But especially when you're a Knicks team, the regular season is not as important because the Knicks' goal this year is clear, and nobody can dispute it. NBA Finals or bust. There's no excuses. There's no hey, but. The Knicks must appear in the NBA Finals this year. And I want to say this right from the beginning. I don't want any revisionist history later on because the NBA season is long, but it has to be said out loud right from jump. After all, last year, you decided Tom Thibodeau held this group back. We don't need to run through all the different grievances of Tibbs. But you didn't make that move to make the playoffs. You didn't make that move to be the top seed. You didn't make that move to get back to the conference finals. You could have done all that with Tom Thibodeau. You did that because you are saying that Tom Thibodeau was holding this group back. Didn't make any big changes this offseason. And the Knicks identified Tibbs as the problem almost immediately after the season. They went into this firing Tibbs without any clear plan B. They went around asking a bunch of organizations, hey, can we have your head coach? And got turned down. And then they eventually settled on Mike Brown. Now, Mike Brown might be fine, and a lot happens in the course of the season. But I think we have to set it in stone now and all agree. We're all on the same page. For those that wanted Tibbs out, you got your wish. Now we get to see how much he was actually holding this group back. Because what's crystal clear is the Knicks must get to the NBA Finals this year, at the very least. Otherwise, the season is a failure, full stop. I don't want to hear about injuries. I don't want to hear about trades. I don't want to hear about drama. All that be damned. And one of the good things about being my age, being old, I guess, is that you can have a perspective. You've seen things happen in cycles before. You've seen things that are similar. And what's going on with the Knicks reminds me of another organization in town a couple of different ways. And this can go one of two ways with the Knicks. You know, it was not that long ago, at least in my eyes, that a team in New York got rid of their coach, even though the coach back then was wildly popular, unlike Tibbs. And everyone thought at the time, disastrous move. Stupid owner getting involved again. Why does he have to ruin such a good thing? And of course, that owner was George Steinbrenner. And it was when the Yankees got rid of Buck Showalter after 95 and brought in Joe Torre. Now, we know now it was the perfect move, right? 4 World Series in 5 years, 3 in a row. But at the time, wildly on pop. Clueless Joe, what an idiot Steinbrenner is. Now, the same thing happened to the same franchise more recently. 2017, Yankees got to within 1 game of the World Series, the Baby Bombers, and they decided that was the time. New leader, new voice in the clubhouse, a fresh voice. And that's when they let go of Joe Girardi and brought in Aaron Boone. Now, the idea was that Boone was going to be able to unlock the Baby Bombers, right? A more gentle approach would be easier on Gary Sanchez and Miguel Andujar and Greg Bird and Clint Frazier. Someone who is going to also better align with the organization, be more collaborative. Sound familiar, Knick fans? Well, let's just say, hopefully for the Knick fan, it works out a whole lot better than it does for the Yankee fan. Because I think every Knick fan right now would admit, and Yankee fans would too, it should not take you 8 years to win a title if you are now the new head coach, the new manager. So, and if it does take 8 years for the Knicks to win a title, it's safe to say at least Mike Brown won't still be here after 8 years. It feels like Aaron Boone's got a job for life, but I can say this confidently right now. If it takes the Knicks, Mike Brown does not have 8 years to win a title. That much is for sure. All right, so we'll keep an eye on the Knicks as the season goes along. But of course, the Knicks' season opening win against the Cavaliers is kind of small potatoes compared to what the NBA is dealing with that FBI investigation. The FBI holding a press conference on Thursday. And really, what they put together, man, it sounds like a movie script, right? 2 different operations, 2 different investigations, 2 different indictments, and they're both tied in together. The first one was called Operation Nothing But Net, which is involving the NBA. Perfect. I mean, what a great title for an operation. The other one was Operation Royal Flush. I didn't feel like it was as creative. The first one was good. Now, that first one was an illegal gambling operation and sports fixing involving Chauncey Billups, involving Terry Rozier, involving Damon Jones. All of them got charged. There was it involved, I think, 11 states, 30 people, and 13 of the people were involved, ties with the Italian mafia. I like how they threw the Italian mafia in there. The second operation was Royal Flush. That one, it sounds like a Tom Cruise movie, right? High-stakes poker games using X-ray cameras, card reading machines, and even contact lenses that could pick up invisible markings on cards. It sounds like James Bond. I didn't even know they had those. Do they sell them on Amazon? Where do you get those? Look, the kicker here is that both groups were involved in the same thing, right? The poker game funded the gambling ring, and then the gambling ring helped fix NBA games. I mean, there's no other way to say it. Allegedly. Now, on the sports side, the details, it seems like they got him dead to rights. According to the FBI, Terry Rozier told people in the ring that he was going to fake an injury in a specific game and leave early. And then they went out and dumped hundreds of thousands of dollars on his underbets, right? That he was going to underperform whatever his lines were, points, rebounds, assists, whatever. And then after 9 minutes, he left the game. And they obviously won their bets. And Rozier, according to the FBI, was counting the cash at his house with the people involved. And it's not just him. Jonte Porter, who's best known for being already banned for gambling operations, he was allegedly threatened to participate because he owed money in gambling circles. So the players were not just involved, they were also under pressure to, and that is coercion. And that's the problem with getting involved with non-legal betting operations. And I know what the people are going to say because they've already started to say it. The immediate takeaway is, well, legalize sports betting. This is it was a mistake from jump. It ruined everything. The leagues created this problem. I've seen that a lot. The leagues are responsible for creating this problem. That they opened the door to by taking the gambling sponsorship money and weaving it into their broadcast and their league. And look, I get it. Sports leagues, they're easy to blame in this. But when you really look at what's going on, you just kind of scratch at the surface just a little bit. it doesn't really hold up, that argument. First off, the leagues did not invent gambling. It's been part of sports forever. People were betting on games way before FanDuel and DraftKings and BetMGM and all the other ones. The only difference now is that it's legal, it's regulated, and it's out in the open. The sports leagues did not create gambling culture or whatever. They just finally decided they weren't going to ignore it anymore because the money was just too great. They took their cut of the pie, but that has nothing to do with this. Because for decades, the gambling, before it was legalized, it hid in the shadows, illegal books and offshore sites. And that's the real danger zone because those things have no oversight. There's no accountability there. So if anything, legalization has only made it harder for those things to go unnoticed because now with bets, there are digital footprints. Every suspicious activity gets flagged and tracked. And obviously, when Terry Rozier underbets on a specific day have hundreds of thousands of dollars placed on them, that's going to raise some eyebrows. So the leagues did not create this problem. They're the ones helping to expose it. So look, you can point to whatever finger you want, but it's now available because of technology. We can finally catch these people in the act. 15 years ago, you would never have heard about this, but it's not because it was not going on. Clearly, they didn't just come up with this, oh, you know what we could do? No, these are people who are criminals. And the people breaking the rules here, they're not doing this because, well, you know, the NBA sponsored with whoever. They're doing it because two things. A, they're super greedy. And B, most importantly, they thought they could get away with it. And when you have hundreds of players and all the different peoples that are going to be involved in a sports league, there is going to be a small number who cross that line. And the existence of gambling does not cause that. That is human nature that causes that. So let's not confuse the cause and the exposure. The leagues did not create the corruption. It's the legal betting markets that usually find this stuff. That's why we're hearing about it now. It's not just that it just started happening. The FanDuels and the DraftKings, they have teams of people looking at this. And that is generally, I don't know here, but that's generally how these investigations start. Illegal rings, they don't have those operations. They want to know the inside information because it keeps their illegal operation going. So gambling, yes. Is it a problem? Yes. And if you could wave a magic wand to get rid of it, okay. But it's illegal gambling that's the real problem. That's the cancer that's eating away at the sport, and that's why this thing happened allegedly. I have to keep saying allegedly. So the second part of this, beyond the fixing of the games, is the poker operation, which, again, it seems, and if you're a Sopranos fan, doesn't this kind of sound like the executive game from The Sopranos? Remember that episode where Tony gets the executive game back up and running, and some of the celebrities were Lawrence Taylor and David Lee Roth. Frank Sinatra Jr. was in. I don't know if there was anybody else involved. But that was one of the big episodes of The Sopranos. Now, I don't think that anything in the writing of it suggested that it was rigged, but Paulie Walnuts was not wearing fake contact lenses. I don't think that Paulie Walnuts would have been able to pull that off. But the only difference here is that game, that was not rigged, I don't believe. At least nothing in the writing said that game was rigged. This obviously was rigged. You know, Tony would never rig a game like that. He had a... No, he would have. If this thing existed, maybe they need a sequel to it to bring this back. But this ring, they had no code. Obviously, they basically cheated everybody that was involved, and then they took that money and they used it to fix NBA games. It's like this a circle story again. And look, it's not hard to see the problem that you have when you have athletes mixing with mobsters and criminals. I think that that's really the bigger problem. Now, how the NBA is able to police that moving forward, I don't know. They're going to have to obviously keep tabs on this type of stuff to prevent it from happening in the future. But look, the larger conversation here is not just the bets, it's the erosion of trust, right? And that's why these leagues always said that they couldn't get involved in gambling because they were worried about the integrity of the game. But much like the great Ted DiBiase line, everybody's got a price. They only worried about it for a certain while. So I do worry about that moving forward. I wonder, do fans stop watching at some point? Because once that trust leaves, it does not come back. And I think that that's what the real conversation here is about the integrity of the game because it feels like when you live online and you live on Twitter, there's already a giant section of that feels like everything's rigged. But I don't know what the integrity of the game really means anymore. Like, yes, I think that you have to sit down and think what you're watching is real, right? That the players are competing to win. Every player involved is looking at the scoreboard and that's all that matters to them. It's what's happening on the scoreboard. But, I guess if that belief goes with enough fans, then you really do have a problem. But I wonder, and look, there is an aspect of this that every, ankle tweak or everybody who leaves a game early now is going to be fire up the conspiracy theories. You don't want to think that you want to think what you're watching is a game. It's not a show. It's not just simply content. And I think you have to ask, are we close to that already? Because it does feel like most people look at it with a skeptical eye, or certainly more do, but I don't know that it's had an impact. And that's the only thing that you have to worry about. Like, does this have an impact at some point where people start tuning out games? So while people are they do have that blurred line with sports betting and all that type of stuff, I think that the audience, it does not seem like it so far. So when stories like this come out about players fixing games and about mob ties and all that type of stuff, there was a time where it felt like that would have been a much bigger story. And these are big stories, but would it ever result in fans checking out and saying, you know what, that's not on the level and I don't buy that anymore and I'm going to do something else with my time? And it does kind of feel like in some ways, at least with the NBA, that the league is too big to fail. And I do wonder, not right now, but in years to come, it's not the same thing, but the WWE fans know that is scripted. And they still pack arenas and they still watch the pay-per-views and they don't care that it's scripted or prearranged or anything like that. They're just there to be entertained. And that's the question that I wonder, like, is that where we're headed? Maybe not right now, but in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years, are we slowly turning sports into a version of just simply, it's just entertainment? And that people will not care. Because again, this is not the first story that's popped up about this. It's not the last time that we're going to talk about it. But I don't think that there has been a tipping point. And I wonder if there is a single scandal that could take place. And think about the NBA. You've already had the Tim Donaghy thing. That didn't impact it. This story we'll have to wait and see if it does impact it, but it is not so far. And I wonder if there is ever that one story that could come up, or is it simply just an erosion of trust over time? I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to watch. What I do know, I don't know where this story is going to go. It's a fascinating one to look at and see the ramifications of it. I think the only thing that you could sit here right now in 2025 and say is that this story is not the last story. And the FBI even said that this is the tip of the iceberg. Oh boy, that doesn't sound good. But I think the one prediction that you can make, and it's pretty close to being, I think, 100% accurate, these stories are only going to grow. But it's not because of these sports leagues. It's because we now have the ways to identify this type of activity. And if ever people get smart and realize that this is being tracked, maybe that might be enough of a deterrent. But I don't think so. Everybody loves to cover sports media, and nobody does it better than our next guest, who is, of course, Andrew Marchand, who's nice enough to give us a few minutes on the podcast today. Andrew, how is everything, my pal?
Everything is well. Thanks for having me on, Gordon.
All right, so NBA is back. It's on NBC. It's on Peacock. It's on Amazon. What were your first initial impressions of the coverage from opening night?
Yeah, so I think NBC did well. What NBC is very good at is making events feel big. I thought it did. I think Mike Tirico has graduated to the stage that you hear his voice and you think it's a big event. Now he's done the Olympics for a while. He's done Sunday Night Football for a good amount of time. He'll do his first Super Bowl in February. So you hear his voice. That makes it feel big at this point. I thought the throwbacks to, Round Ball Rock was good. Jordan, I mean, it's kind of like it's Michael
Is that
Jordan.
What it's going to be with Jordan? Like, is that when I heard
yeah,
he was
that's
going to be part
it's
of it?
not going to be. We have a story on the Athletic right now. It's not. I think it's up to him.
Mm-hmm.
The inclination it's pretty obvious he's not going to do that much. He wasn't there when they announced it at the upfronts, which is the advertising week, where they kind of like to trot out someone like Michael Jordan. I don't know how much it would have cost to get him to fly up private from North Carolina to get there, but he didn't do it. He wasn't at the arena on opening night. So I think that probably is it. Maybe get a little bit more here and there, but not too much more than that. So that was, it's good to see Jordan there, for people of a certain age. If you see Jordan, it's kind of, there's something special, even if he really didn't say anything. I didn't really understand that. Like he was nervous to take a free throw. First off, he said it was years since he picked up a basketball. Then it kind of implied that it was a couple weeks ago at the Ryder Cup that he picked up a basketball. So that didn't make sense. And then like you have these like 10-year-olds or something watching him take a free throw and he's nervous. It's like, I get he's Michael Jordan, he's Mr. Competitive, but this seemed sort of strange. I know, like, if you're in front of your kids when
Right.
they're little and you want to take a free throw, you want to show that like dad can, like, yeah, I can nail a free throw. So maybe that's might be a little nervous there. But if I'm Michael Jordan, I'm not sure. Anywho, so that's gonna be Jordan's. The pregame show probably needs a little work.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that, and it's more in the line of the NFL stuff too. Who is that audience for? The big national pregame shows? Because I got to be honest, I'm a pretty big diehard sports fan. I know a bunch of diehard sports fans. I don't know anybody on an NFL Sunday who is sitting down and watching the pregame show. They're sitting down at 1:00 as soon as the games start. And it just seems like an immediate environment where costs are everything, right? Everything is about how much that you spend. It would seem like who is the audience for that?
I think two things there. Number one, they are a relic of the past. So there is a grand tradition dating back to the NFL today, ESPN with NFL
Sure.
Countdown back in the day with Chris Berman. And I still think they can sell those pretty good. And I think the ratings are probably a little bit, they're not what they once were, but they're not terrible. So there are people who watch. I do think that for most of us, we're just inundated with information. We're doing this podcast. Aaron Glenn said he doesn't know who the quarterback is going to be this week. We already know this. So we don't need to Sunday. I guess we'll find out who. Maybe they'll tell us on the show that, but you'll get on your phone. You get on, the Athletic or Twitter or wherever. So yeah, they're not really needed. And I think a pregame show, the postgame show still, if you look at where we're going digitally, Amazon, Thursday Night Football, that postgame show does pretty well because you have the full game. They've done pretty well in
Post game.
that.
I can understand. Yeah, I understand.
It's the pregame that, it's kind of a relic. To answer your question, it's kind of a relic of the past. You don't really need it.
Mm-hmm. All right, NBC, Amazon. How are they going to judge success here? Is it subscriptions? Is it viewership? How is that judged on this deal?
I think over the 11 years, you want to be profitable. Number one, if you're Peacock, you're trying to add subscriptions. I mean, they're a little behind and viewership. You look at what they did. They have the Premier League. They have the Olympics. They have the NFL. That's most of the year, a lot of the years. Obviously, the Olympics is only every 2 years, but it's a big deal. This gives them the spring that when they didn't really have anything. Obviously it starts now, and so they're trying to make it so you never cancel Peacock. The broadcast component gives them reach. For Amazon, I mean, overall, I had Jay Marine on my podcast a while ago. He's the head of Amazon's global sports video, and they just want to make that Prime Video as you have to have it, that you just can't live without it. We saw the other day when AWS went down and nobody could work their websites, that, the idea that, well, they're spending $1 billion on Thursday Night Football, like it matters, because I don't know what they get paid through AWS, but the fact that nothing worked makes me think like they're doing pretty well in terms of making money off AWS, which was already known. So yeah, I think they want to be a place. You look what they're doing in sports. They got NFL, they got NBA now, they got Yankees locally for 20 games a year. Canada, they got the NHL. Internationally, they have a lot of big time soccer. It's pretty obvious they're at the top of the heap of terms of events, and it's for their subscription service. So to answer your question, all the above. I mean, they want to make their subscriptions stronger. They can sell advertising. It is a lot of money. There's some cachet to, I think also a lot of these places like to be associated with these events. So, get just they're important. And so all those things.
Can you dispel the notion that a lot of fans have that the NBA is somehow dying? Because it feels, especially online, it feels like that people think that the NBA is in some financial trouble, even though they just signed an 11-year, what is it, $75 billion contract for their games.
Well, I think that's the best, way to answer it. And I think even more so is that they ended up doing the deals with Disney and ABC, ESPN staying on, Amazon Prime Video and NBC Peacock coming in. NBC Peacock owned by Comcast. So three huge companies. Warner Brothers Discovery wanted to keep the NBA. And was willing to go to the dollars that NBC, or at least close to the dollars. They ended up not doing it. So, but they were in there. YouTube had interest. And those are five companies. Now, you could argue, okay, it's getting unpopular, but these companies, yeah, they want the cachet of the NBA. I mean, of just being with it, but it's not because they don't think it's going to be successful. Now, they're not always correct. And I do think they do have a regular season issue a little bit. The tonnage sports in a digital world, it's just a little bit harder for them to monetize as compared to when cable and RSNs were ruling the day, and they're making so much money off of those entities. Now that those have diminished, people talk about ESPN and cord cutting and people never getting cable, but the RSNs have been hit much harder overall, nationally. And so they've had a transition from that. And the ratings are lower. Everything's lower. I mean, and now they've gone up a little bit. Everything's going up. So everyone hypes because Nielsen changed how they do the ratings, called big data. So the numbers are higher because of how they're counting things than they were in recent years. So you're getting a lot of, this is the biggest audience in 10 years, which is partly still popular, but partly because of how they're doing the ratings. That's kind of like radio ratings. Sometimes they would do it differently, or like you hear a talk show. I don't know if you remember this, but you'd have a talk show and they'd get crushed in the ratings. And then you get an email if you were on the staff and it'd be like, well, we're still doing well. 25 to 49-year-old left-handers who live in Brooklyn and take the subway 3 times a week.
Right. That's the key demographic, of course.
And if you get that in your email, the ratings weren't good.
All right. So you wrote that the approach now with Amazon and NBC is kind of away from the inside the NBA kind of criticism of the league. Why do you think that has been the approach from the new people?
Well, I think number one, the NBA wants a more uplifting, celebrate the game type of approach. You look at Inside the NBA, which is moving from TNT to ESPN. To me, it's the best studio show in sports media history.
Absolutely.
It's funny. And Barkley's the best. Ernie Johnson gets a lot of flowers, but deserves them all because he's really tremendous. And Shaq and Kenny are, make it work as well to round it up. That said, it's not a positive show. I mean, they have a, what team does he play on is like a segment.
Sure. But I mean, look, people eat it up though, and I'm not saying that you have to, nobody would want to copy that, but it just seems like, is that a sign that the ratings don't really matter that much, that they're willing to go against something that's obviously popular?
Well, it's interesting with the ratings. ESPN's pregame show did better than TNT's, and that's largely because of the lead-in. And so I think it's smart in that I think ESPN for years tried to match what Inside the NBA, was trying to do. They've had Stephen A, they've had Wilbon, they Bill Simmons. They just went through everybody trying to Magic. You just go on and on. And you can't really beat them at their game because nobody has Barkley and even Ernie, but the Ernie probably can find another Ernie, but there's no Barkley. And so, I think they're trying to be younger. I mean, you look at those guys too; they're all in their 60s for the most part. Shaq's, I think, late 50s, or maybe even a little bit younger than that. But still, they're older. The Amazon and NBC people are, more recent. The pregame show though on NBC wasn't great. I mean, the first day, forgetting the mic issue, it just kind of bland.
It's a work in progress, though.
Yeah, and but it is a work in progress. But I don't know if there's someone I'm like, oh, he's going to say something.
Right.
I didn't really get that sense that any of them were really going to say something great.
Is the NBC with the NBA, is that the model that's going to be like what other leagues look to do now? Like in 5 years, what does sports broadcasting look like?
Yeah, I mean, you should read The Athletic because I'm working on a big story on that. Okay,
Yep.
it's going to be a while,
Great
but
question. Yes.
yeah, good. It is a very good question. I think what we're seeing now, you're going to have this issue of you need too many subscriptions, it costs too much. It's a little bit. I think, like for example, the NBA. I think it's a little overrated that it's so hard to find their games as it's I just think you're gonna get accustomed. It's just Sunday night after Sunday night football. It's gonna be Sunday night basketball. After Thursday night football, it's gonna be Thursday night basketball. So Mondays and Tuesdays are NBC and Peacock. Wednesdays and Fridays are ESPN and Amazon. Weekends is ABC and Amazon. I know it sounds like a lot, but I don't think it's as complicated. I think it's just one of the things. And look, do you need a lot of subscriptions? Yeah, that's. I mean, I don't. I don't think it's. I don't think, at least right now, there's not a model. I'm looking into this. If there will be a model that kind of like cable where it's just easy. I do think like I have Spectrum and they give me all of. I shouldn't say give me. I
They
pay.
don't give you anything.
They don't give me anything. It's $180, but it does include now ESPN, Disney Plus, Hulu, NBC, Peacock, HBO Max. All of that's included in my 180. So that's a little bit easier. I don't have to think about, do I have
Right.
do I have do I need then Prime Video? Yes. Netflix? Yes. Whatever. But it's a little bit more in tune. So I think we're going there. I mean, I think there's going to be bundles. Like I would say that it makes sense to me for Disney and Comcast and Amazon to have some sort of triple play, NBA triple play,
Hmm.
where you could get the three for a discount. That would make sense to me.
Is the
What do I
NFL
know?
just bulletproof though, in terms of can we remove them from the conversation just because they are so popular? It seems like they're doing the opposite of what you would do. Like they're putting it in oversaturation. There's, there's all these different streaming platforms. Are they just bulletproof?
Well, as one of my mentors, Phil Mushnick, has always said, there's no graph in the history of the world that just goes straight up. So uh, I would say that probably even applies to the NFL. That said, they are all powerful at the moment, and they don't. The rules don't really apply to them. But I do think, I have Sunday ticket. I was looking at the games for this weekend. I mean, what are we? Week 7, week
Week
8?
8. Yeah,
We're
week 8.
already struggling.
Yeah.
And, week 13, what are we going to be at? And I think, I mean, that's not really there. He got their money from YouTube for $2 billion a year, so they maybe don't care. It just, I don't know. You can't make it. So I said this a million times on my podcast. If you teach people not to care, they'll listen eventually. Like load management, the NBA said not the NBA, but the team said this game is not important.
Hmm.
Now they still were charging $1 million, and in New York, we know they still sell out, so there's still an audience, and they're still getting away with it. But you can't tell me that philosophy, which might be the smartest in terms of trying to win a championship, has not trickled down to fans saying the regular season is not that important. You guys told us it's not that important. So I think at some level, and if we're talking about out of 100%, when the NFL is at 5-6% that they're kind of chipping away at it because they're so strong, it does make a difference. But I do think they should be cognizant of it. At some point, you also have to say, it's like kind of your podcast, my stories. You can think about business models all day and long, but you got to think about, am I making a good product? Would I want to listen to it? Is this the best way to present this stuff? And I think money follows that often. I'm not saying you shouldn't go for the most money or they shouldn't try to stretch their strength, but I do think that Sunday is kind of the bedrock of what
Right.
they do. And the 425 games are generally pretty good, but like you're just gonna say it's 425, 1 o'clock doesn't matter. Okay. And for me personally, and maybe if I was 12, when I was 12, I think maybe I'd like 9:30, 1, 425, 8 o'clock. For me personally, as an adult, when I'm generally 1 to midnight, like that's generally what I'm doing, 1 to
Right.
midnight every Sunday.
Hmm.
Now you want me 9:30 as well?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like a lot of people getting divorced, I think.
Yeah, I'm boycotting the 9:30 game. It's not had an impact so far in the NFL. They've not felt it in the pocketbook, but I'm just unless my team is playing at 9:30, it's too early for me. Sunday I like to ease into the day and ease into my
And
couch.
you do things, right? You have
Yeah, yeah,
family, you got
exactly.
stuff to do, and
Hmm.
it's it's a lot. Like I always say about the NFL, that one of the reasons it's so successful is that if the Yankees, for example, in baseball had 17 games,
Of
what would the
course.
numbers be?
Right.
And so uh, you really only have to, if you're a Giant fan, you only have to say, "Hey, honey, I only need 3 hours this week."
Hmm.
In general, like, yeah, I
Hmm.
want to watch the late game. Okay, fine. I can say I got to work, which my wife knows I say is like an excuse when I want to do something. But um, but so when you make it difficult though, it's these 9:30, it's just I don't know. I didn't like
Yeah.
the YouTube game. I think the platform, it's where everyone's going to assess the platform, which I think was perhaps part of it, that people don't can't be told to watch YouTube. They find thing on YouTube. It's the most popular platform.
Hmm.
But also that second game on that Friday of the year, I'm not sure I love that. Like it's just I already got a Thursday game, I got college games, I got Sunday games. Do I need a Friday game that week? I don't think I don't know. I felt I watched because it was YouTube and I wanted to see what it was like.
Right.
And I had to do it for my job. But if I didn't have that, and the numbers kind of showed it, they didn't do that well.
A couple of
Yeah,
questions about F1 and Apple. Was the move to Apple for F1, was that simply just the money grab, or does Apple have this vision for F1 that we don't know about yet?
money grab. I mean, F1 was offering 140 million per year for domestic U.S. rights. ESPN stood at 90. It's a $50 million difference, so that's why they did it. If you read the stories that people cover F1, and then you go back and read the people who covered MLS when MLS did the
Mhm.
Apple deal, I think they read exactly the same. And ultimately, and I get it, you can't say it's about money, but here's the thing. When you take the most money, I'm not listening to the rest of your reasoning. It's like baseball players. If a free agent, if you take less money, I'll listen to how you want to stay and whatever. But you can't tell me you wanted to stay and then you take the most money. Again, I don't begrudge you, but you just like those whatever you're saying, it's like Charlie Brown, it's want. It's like it doesn't resonate. And so ultimately this was a money play.
Why do you think Apple keeps trying to make sports and pushing into sports when it doesn't really seem like they've had any clear success so far?
Yeah, that's one question. I mean, and my bigger question is if you're going to push into sports, why not push in with the sports we know that works? I mean,
Hmm.
the Amazon Prime Video, yeah, they've spent a lot, but they're like significant players. And you can make a pretty good argument that none of these places need these things. Like, they don't really need, a lot of, again, does it maybe grow their ability to sell us more things through Amazon Prime Video? Maybe, but it costs $1 billion. So, they could spend that billion in advertising, or there's a lot of other things they could do with that money. And so is this the most efficient way? I don't know. But Apple, I think it's the strategy that is kind of befuddling. Eddie Q has said that they want to own everything. So MLS is kind of the model. They own the global rights to it. It doesn't seem like a success. As I've always say, the numbers are so great for Apple with MLS and MLB and their doubleheaders on Friday with MLB. They're so great that they won't even reveal them. They're just so good that they won't even tell us what they are. And
Right.
so, generally that doesn't, generally that means that they're not so good. So it's the strategy I don't understand. They could buy anything, but if I'm the NFL, like, 4 years when they're going to opt out and Apple wants, let's say they want a piece, I don't know if I'm going with them if it's close. I mean, I feel like tie goes to Amazon and the traditional players if the money's close.
How sustainable is the model, like with all these streaming platforms? And it seems like they're losing billions of dollars in the process. How long do you think this is going to continue like this?
Well, I don't know if they're losing billions of dollars, so I'm just gonna,
Oh,
go
really?
back.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe they are. It's hard to say. And
Millions.
like,
All right. Multi-million.
well, they just can. They can put it into their reports different ways. It helps
Mhm.
us here. You don't see it. It's not tangible. So, but yeah, I mean, they all seem to be interested. Netflix has gotten into it bigger. I don't think they're going anywhere. Amazon obviously is the most distinct, I'd say, best strategy. Apple's still involved. YouTube might move into it. So it's lot going on.
Most underrated broadcaster working today in your eyes?
Like Gordon Damer.
No, come on. Yeah,
Okay. Most underrated
Yeah.
sportscaster working today. I'll say Jason Benetti. I think he's excellent. I think a lot of people think he's excellent, but not doing a number one. I'll say Benetti, maybe Adam Amin. I'm thinking of like guys who haven't gone to that next level. I'll say those two.
The one studio show you never miss.
We already decided we don't watch any of them.
We did.
One studio show,
but you're the guy. You're covering all this.
The one studio show would probably be Inside the NBA. I do miss it, but I would say that's the one I'm more apt to feel like I'm watching because I'm watching. I mean, again, like there's anybody listening, I don't want them to feel like I'm doing any heavy lifting watching any of these things.
Right.
But I will say, there's some shows like I wouldn't really watch First Take on my, I watch it,
Sure.
Again, talk radio too. It's not something I think I would go out of my way to listen to. I do listen to it. It's sort of as someone, who grew up, with like FAN, in 87, I'm 13 years old. I grew up with FAN. So sometimes it's just kind of soothing to hear, Sal and BT just going crazy about nothing. It's just sort of like, okay, I'm going to enjoy my lunch. And for some reason, this feels right to me, even though they're talking nonsense.
I think those guys do a great job.
They do. They do a good job.
But the point is that's a time slot that has always kind of bounced around. I think they're the best people that have ever been in that time slot.
Yeah, you might be right. I mean, it's just them like in the middle of the year talking about Pete. It's like June, and we're talking about Pete Alonso's contract. It's not going to be, really in play until December. There's something about it that just feels right to me.
Yeah.
But I'd say Inside the NBA is probably the show. As a work-wise these days, College Game Day versus Big Noon Kickoff has my interest.
If you had one media story to cover that you've not gotten a chance to somebody to interview or something to do in sports media that you've not already done, what would it be?
I probably want to talk to Brady. I've never talked to Brady. I haven't talked to Peyton either. I like to get as close to the people and get to know them as well as I can. So that's sort of, I have a sense of them, and I follow them closely. You almost feel like, when you're following these people, it's a little, to me, weird, like, cause I've generally know the people, even the broadcasters, at some level. So I probably want to talk to them. I think Michael Jordan is someone I'd like to talk to as well, but I also, in the same light, don't really care. I don't really care about talk. It's not like I want to talk to him because oh my God, that'd be cool. There's more
right.
Especially the ones I cover, I'd be more curious about that. I mean, a lot of these people are very guarded, and so they can be okay, but Peyton's very involved in what he does, but it's a little guarded. But those would probably be the two.
Last one, before you came back to sports media, you were covering the Yankees on an everyday basis for ESPN. How closely do you still follow what goes on in that world?
I follow it, but not even a tenth of what I was covering. I just, like if you said, name the entire Yankee starting lineup, I doubt I could do that. I follow it though, especially the playoffs. I get into it. I have now about 7 or 8 years removed. First year, my wife had to hear, if I was still covering the Yankees, I'd be in Minnesota right now. She got a little sick of that, but I'm past that, so it's been a while. The thing about baseball is that it's great. I love it. I wish they had changed the rules, the pitch clock rules. I literally would have 6 months of my life back.
Oh my God.
So that was. But the thing about covering baseball, it's great to cover. I like it a lot. Like my guy Tyler Kepner at The Athletic, he loves baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Like I once asked Tyler, here's the dilemma. You could either watch baseball all year, normal, but you can only eat salad. You can only eat lettuce for a full year. Or you can't watch baseball at all, but you can eat whatever you want. And his question to me was, would I get sick with the lettuce? So he would do, I think he'd do the lettuce. I like baseball a lot. I don't love it to that. I did it a long time, but to
Yeah.
do it like for the rest of my life wasn't something that I really wanted to do. So I do follow it, but not as closely.
Andrew, thank you so much for great insight, and I really do appreciate it, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, you're the best, man. Thank you.
Remember college? Well, now, college is over, and here comes your student loan debt. Is your private student loan debt keeping you up at night? You really need to talk to YRefi. YRefi refinances distressed or defaulted private student loans that others won't touch. They can save you thousands of dollars and get you a custom payment that you can afford. And they don't care what your credit score is. Don't let private student loan debt ruin your life. Call YRefi today.
All right, finally on this episode, let's talk about the New York Jets. Do we have to talk about the New York Jets? Yes, we have to talk about the New York Jets. I did that episode a couple episodes ago with Jake Assman, and I figured that was the right time to get the Jets out of the way because we weren't going to be able to talk about the Jets moving forward. What possibly could we talk about with the Jets? They're 0-7. They're going nowhere. They don't even look like a professional football team. So we got it all out of the way. What else could you say? Then Woody Johnson had to come out at the NFL league meetings and open his big fat mouth. Woody, learn 2 words. No comment. When everything's going wrong, don't feed the fire. And that's exactly what Woody did the other day, earlier in the week. And look, he tried to paint a picture that there's reason for optimism surrounding the Jets and, what the defense has done and what the special teams has done. And Aaron Glenn is doing a good job. And he talked about hugging Aaron Glenn basically every day. And he talked about, he can see the things that the fans can't see and that things are trending in the right direction. Like, dude, do you listen to, does he have nobody around him that going to tell him how that's going to sound? And the problem with anything that Woody says, and this is true every time it seems like he opens his mouth, he always makes it worse. There was nothing that he was going to be able to say that would have made Jet fans feel better. They want wins. They want actual, tangible results. The only thing he could have said that would have made him feel better, I'm selling the team. And I've always maintained, I don't think Woody Johnson's the worst owner in the NFL. At least he has had some stretches of success as owner. There's other guys who have not. David Tepper certainly has not. The guy in Cleveland has not. Stephen Ross in Miami. So I always try to present Woody as not being the worst owner. But Woody, you got to meet me halfway on this, dude. I mean, you can't keep making it worse. And look, the fact that I don't think he's the worst does not make him good. He's clearly not a good owner. And nothing he was going to say was going to help the situation. And sometimes you have to know that. If you're not going to help the situation, just sit it out. And what made it worse was he was talking about, his comments about Justin Fields and how any coach would have the same problem with a quarterback like that. So first off, he threw his quarterback under the bus. And it just raises the most basic, obvious questions. Why the hell did you sign him then? He was not part of the roster when Aaron Glenn got here. This was the big swing that your regime took, the first one. And whatever you think of Justin Fields, you would have to agree the Jets are getting the worst version of him. So that's on this organization. Now, nobody's saying that he was a franchise quarterback, but you guys didn't have to go out and sign him like a franchise quarterback. You went out there hoping that you had identified a guy who was undervalued. And Fields has always been raw. And clearly the Jets thought he could be developed. What are the signs that your coaching has done that? He looks like the worst version of himself. And that is on the Jets. That's not just simply on Justin Fields. Justin Fields didn't sign himself. And it's also worth remembering the way the Jets handled the Aaron Rodgers thing. Glenn seemed to go out of his way almost to cozy up to the owner, Woody Johnson, by cutting Rodgers loose in the way that they did and kind of really sticking it to him on his way out the door. And I didn't think that keeping Rodgers was the right move. God, looking back now, Rodgers threw for almost 4,000 yards last year and 28 touchdowns on the Jets. And again, one of the first moves that this regime had, and it feels like it's kind of hard to separate thinking that Woody had his fingerprints on that. So again, I didn't think that Woody Johnson is the worst owner in the NFL. It's almost like he's trying to create the case to prove me wrong. But what's not debatable at this point is they have had success with Woody, but it's been a long time. And it seems like things are continuing to get worse. The longer he's the owner, the worse the situation gets. So I still will maintain I don't think Woody Johnson is the worst owner, but it is clear at this point the biggest roadblock to the Jets getting better is the owner. And that's a big problem because that's one you can't remove. You can't fire him away. You can't have another team sign him. You can't trade him away. Woody Johnson is the owner of the New York Jets. And forever how long he owns that team, nobody wants to hear from Woody. His team should tell him, no more talking for you. Actual results. We don't want to hear about how great things are behind the scenes when you're hugging Aaron Glenn. That's not what people want to hear about. People want to see wins on the field. That is it. Get them to sign on the line that is dotted, much like Glengarry Glen Ross. The results are the results, and nobody wants to hear from the Jets owner anymore when your team is 0-7 and you're complaining about the quarterback that you signed. Again, go back to last year with Justin Fields in Pittsburgh. He was not this bad. Now, he might not ever be good. Clearly, he's not ever going to be good. But it's safe to say that the Jets are the worst version for Justin Fields. And it's not getting any better, right? Like, they might be forced to play him, but it's clear this was the wrong move for him. But it feels like the Jets are the common denominator here, where they get the worst out of everything. And so at some point, you can blame the coach, but the coach just got here. This is a running trend line. So who is the one consistent during that time? And that clearly is Woody Johnson. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. Again, hit that subscribe button, especially on YouTube for our giveaway on the Knicks tickets later in November. And we will see you next time, only right here on Gordon Damer on Sports.